Okay, hi, I'm Renee Hobbs, and here I am on Tuesday, February 28th in EDC 534, Digital Authorship at the Harrington School of Communication and Media in the Graduate Certificate in Digital Literacy. And I'm here with a whole team of amazing talent. I see Denise, I see Cornelia, I see Meg, I see Barbara, I see Meg, I see Sherry, I don't see, but I know you're there, and I see Matthew. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. So let's start before we even do anything with like Leap 2, highlights and lowlights of this very unusual assignment. Very unusual assignment. Highlights and lowlights of Leap 2, now that you've survived it. Oh, Cornelia, let's turn your microphone on.
Okay. It was really challenging, and I definitely learned from my creation with my partner. So yes, it did what it was supposed to do, and we were really excited about the results.
Cool. What made it challenging?
Let's see.
Challenging aspects.
What made it challenging was first time. We made an infographic first on that. First time with the software. First time, first time with everything you set up. So it was good. Kept on jumping over the hoops or through the hoops.
What a beautiful description. Thanks for sharing. Who's next? We're talking about highlights and lowlights of the Leap 2 learning experience. Barbara.
I have a wonderful partner, but we each brought our ideas, the key ideas that had jumped out at us, and we connected on one of them. And then it was Meg's suggestion that we just work from a shared Google slide thing. So we could get our images up there independently and then tweak them as far as format and order, and then put them into something a little more interesting. So it was fun. And as far as finding images, I found that it was, we had done that image thing the week before where we had to search for images. So I used that same approach to find these images that seemed to fit. So it wasn't that hard. It was fun.
Cool. That's a great description. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else want to describe your highlights and lowlights of Leap 2? Meg.
So I did learn everything that Barbara said in the collaboration piece, but I also recognize that I've always considered myself not so much a visual learner, but I do learn best through imagery. And but I found that when I express myself, I lean on text a lot. And so when we set up the platform with the collaborative Google Slides, it was very easy to find text to support what I wanted to say. And we actually ended up using ThingLink because I stepped back and said, oh, it's not really image-based.
Aha! So there's a really lot of self-reflection embedded in that. Thank you for sharing. That is interesting. You know, Neil Postman I used to argue about that all the time because he was a word guy and he was convinced that images couldn't do much except be illustration. And so we had fun arguing about that, but we do come to terms with our own personal biases in that. I'll hear from 2 more people and then we'll move on. What were your highlights and lowlights with Leap 2? Pat.
I really enjoyed, Jamie and we worked together really well. We were able to work in shared Google Docs and also do some Google Hangout to get in touch. The other thing is we divided and conquered a little bit. I did parts, she did parts, and we were able to get back together for it. And I think finding the images was difficult. Just because you really were looking at what the picture was saying and who it was speaking to. And you wanted to have a diverse group of picture if you had more than one, and all those parts of it we talked about quite a bit.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. That issue of what is that meaning of that image, and how is that meaning being understood by different kinds of audiences? It requires conversation to unpack that. All right, anybody else? Okay, so I'm really pleased about that. I'm looking forward to reviewing your LEAP 2, and you can see that I've made, just like I did for your LEAP 1 page, I've made a special page. It's the Learn Train, right? The Learn Train. We're on the Learn Train now, right? And there's the links that I've found in various ways. I hope certainly by midnight tonight to have all of the links here live for you, so you can take a look at those. Let's take a look at our agenda for tonight. The topic is identity in a digital age. Again, it was absolutely thrilling to watch the dialogue that happened after our live class last week, right? So I just have to give a shout out. Angie, really interesting. So these folks were watching Chubby Bunny and Sparkles. They were wrestling. Adam, wonderful, wonderful. Wrestling with this kid playful media. Tim, really fine. Alita, amazing. Really, I love the way, Erica, loved the way this dialogue emerged on the WordPress page. In fact, I think this group demonstrated the same level of reflective thinking as we saw in the small groups, which is actually really building my confidence about how we can use a variety of different platforms, right, to engage in a dialogue. And I was just delighted to see that. So kudos to you students who were able to participate in that dialogue outside of our live class. It was also pretty exciting to see the reflections that you're posting and sharing your LEAP 2, but all week long you've been sharing stuff, and that's been terrific. And Denise, I think last week you invited us to help your school out in some way or another. Can you tell us what's happened between last week and this week? What's the status of that work there?
I was talking to you and I didn't unmute my mic.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's not your fault. That's my fault. Absolutely. I was waiting all day Sunday for the results. And about between 10:30 and midnight, probably, I forget around which time I clicked on, we jumped up 36 spots. So we were on 62 and now we're on number 26. And so I can't wait to see what is going to happen this Sunday. But I'm not going to check every hour this Sunday because I know it's not going to be there at the beginning of the day.
Got it. So you had some movement on your efforts to be number one, partly because you get by with a little help from your friends, right?
Yes, definitely.
And clearly you're using social media in a creative way with that project. So kudos to you. We'll look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Now, tonight, what I'd like to do is I have a viewing and discussion project for us. It's a little bit similar to what we did last week, but we're only going to look at one video. We'll look at it together, and we'll discuss this question in kind kind of a large group setting. We're going to look at a short YouTube video called My Digital Name, an Origin Story. And as we watch, we're going to be reflecting on this question: how is identity influenced by mass media and popular culture? Okay, that's our question for tonight. Let me pull up the video here.
I was not.
Okay, so before I show this to you, can you guys give me a thumbs up if you can all see my screen? Okay, so I'm going to play this on my screen. I'm going to play it big screen. It's only 4 minutes long. We'll watch it, and then we'll talk about it. All right, here we go.
I was not born Jackie Carachet. Some of you may have already guessed that. If you hadn't guessed from the general improbability of the name itself, you may have noticed in some of my more popular videos, people referring to me by another name. Keith, and that is indeed my legal name, but in the digital space, I communicate with other people and largely identify myself as Jackie Carachet. Now, why would I do that? Good question. Nerdy story. Let's get started. When I was a kid, I was a huge fan of Star Wars. I not only had the action figures, but I would role-play adventures in the backyard without any sort of props. I didn't even have like a toy plastic lightsaber. Everything was just completely imagined. In these adventures, and in games like TIE Fighter and Rogue Squadron, yes, I felt the need to have some sort of consistent character that I could move from adventure to adventure. And Keith just lacked a certain epicness. I mean, it's really hard to imagine like an epic struggle when you say this. A Jedi defending the Jawas. How is this possible? It must be Keith. I will deal with this one myself. So yeah, I was in a little bit of a bind with my Star Wars adventures because I didn't want to be Luke Skywalker and I didn't want to be Dash Rendar. I wanted to be someone different, someone specific, but not Keith. All of that changed one day in 1999 or 2000 when my family got like a box of cereal that had all of the Star Wars Episode 1 advertising and stuff all over it. Obviously, it was targeted towards kids, and on the back there was a Create Your Jedi Name. The first name it gave was Jackie. It had something for the last name, but I kind of didn't understand the concept of a mother's maiden name back then. Why did they use that? So from that point on, I had Jackie, but I didn't have any sort of epic last name. I spent 4 or 5 years just kind of trying things pretty much at random until I lived in Canada, and I started trying to teach myself Japanese. I had a long affinity for Japanese language and culture, but it wasn't until I sort of got to that point in like 2005 or 6 or something like that, that I actually was able to start trying to teach myself the language. It was at that point that I learned the equivalent of letters in our language in Japanese are actually consonant-vowel pairs. With this knowledge, I essentially just grabbed a few different consonant-vowel pairs. In Japanese, kind of the S and SH, like there's some weird exceptions there. So I initially just had SHE, she. So I had kanashe without the A for a while until I thought to myself, I want this to look cooler when I write it down. And in my mind, at least at that point, words that seemed sort of sophisticated and cool and stuff were words that had multiple vowels in sequence. So then I put an A in, and then that was that. At this point, everything related to this name was very kind of fantastical. I'd use the name all the time for games and for pen and paper role-playing games, StarArs or Lord of the Rings or whatnot. But around the time that I finalized the name, or shortly after, I got exposure to like my first recording setup and started to get the idea, the notion of making music and releasing it publicly. And at that point, there was so much awesome that had just been built into that name over all those years that I just decided that I liked it more than using my legal name for my music and my eventual releases. This musician pseudonym connection was basically what led into all of the other places that I used that pseudonym. All the public social media services that I joined, I initially joined for the sake of promoting my music, promoting my band. So I essentially was making band accounts for YouTube and for Twitter and for Tumblr. And slowly and eventually that name changed from being solely like a band name to just being me. Once again, I have daily vlogs over here. It's a mobile vlog from my school and my house and all that good stuff. I've also just gotten onto VU right down there, so you can go there and ask me questions, and that would be awesome, and hopefully I can answer them. This is Jackie Kirashay, wishing you many epic adventures.
Okay. Where do we begin?
I want to say, Renee, I want to say something.
Go ahead. Hi,
Yeah.
Asha.
Yeah, hi. As far as I understand, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. He decided to change his name because he doesn't like his name, and also he wants a very attractive name, using an attractive name, and he likes a Star Wars movie. We can say it is movie effect, maybe. We can say it is movie effect. He chose the Star Wars character name in first name, and then he start investigating Japanese name because you want a cool name, a cool and different name, because it is important, because his age is young. Maybe that's why he wants determine his new name is very attractive and people like name. I mean, then he choose this name, and he start using first name and last name. It is not his legal name, but people like he used more and more he start to use this new name. And also, it is my observation now, especially young people, if their name is traditional name, they don't like use this name, and they prefer sometimes movies names, sometimes and different culture names. For example, in Turkey, people especially prefer American American nickname. Maybe I mean is he popular culture and movies give him a new name.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was good. Thank you for sharing. Other perspectives on this. What did you notice? Matthew?
All right. So I kind of connected this to the Buckingham piece where I was assigned. He has the comfort of forming this identity. I'm assuming at least middle class young male. Yeah, he's like his big thing is, I didn't even have a lightsaber toy. Could you imagine? I'm sitting there. I'm like, you are super privileged. So that's one thing that immediately stuck out right from the get-go to me.
Yeah, very nice. So we recognize his background, his race, his social class, probably had some role to play in his attraction to the Star Wars saga in particular, right? And even though he said when he was little he played without any toys, right? He played without any toys, he said in the beginning. Obviously, we see that the toys and the video games were part of it. What else did you notice about this young man, Mary?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is that it seemed to me to be a commercial influence on him, first with the Star Wars franchise, and then, if I'm not mistaken, was his name choice of Jackie coming from a cereal box? Did I catch that correctly? So that's, the commercial world entering his personal life. The Japanese is something else, but that's one noticing I had about the commerce connection.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. What else did you notice?
I'm
yeah.
ready to unpack with the Japanese as something else. um, I don't know. It's his interest in the language is definitely authentic. He seemed to know a lot about the language, but he's obviously not a Japanese person. And I wonder, like, is it appropriation that he picked? Is that the cause of him choosing a Japanese name, or he thinks it's so exciting because it's foreign or something different to him? But I'm not sure if he understands what it means for him to have a Japanese name.
Yeah. The other thing about his Japanese name is that his choice of using Japanese letters to choose it in the S group of Japanese letters, it's shi, su, se, so, and there's no sha with an H. So that's a little bit of remix of him combining sounds, originally Japanese, but changing them somehow.
Aha! And maybe only a beginner who is self-taught would make that kind of mistake, right? Make that kind of mistake. Meg and then Barbara.
So I don't know if this necessarily relates to pop culture or media, but I was thinking back to Dana Boyd, who was cited in the article that we read this week, and also along the lines of Bell Hooks and their discussions on identity and name and the ego. And I just thought there was a lot of thought that went into this name. So it means a lot to him. And I don't really know where I'm at with that in relation to Dana and Bell, but it's just something that struck me as he was talking so much about name and identity, that these two people push back against the ego and name and identity.
Indeed, and both of those authors that you described, they choose to use the lowercase for their own names as a form of awareness about the limitations of names in relation to identity, right? Yeah, very interesting. Barbara, you're next.
Yeah, I'm old school. First, the fact that he doesn't like his name Keith is really subjective, because culturally perhaps it's not cool. And again, the names he did like were cool in his thinking or culturally. But I guess my thinking is, it's not what your name is, it's what you do that makes you cool or not cool. So he could call himself anything. If he's cool, he's cool. And it's the way I look at it. And it doesn't matter if his name is cool, if he's not cool, he's not cool.
And I like your acknowledgement. They're underlining that is Buckingham's idea about identity is something we do. Yeah. And you all underlined that, right? When you were reading that. That's right. Identity is something you do, not something you are. Adam.
Something I noticed was it was towards the end. So after he went through this whole process of wanting to create a name because he was influenced by Star Wars, he wanted a cool Jedi name. He had mentioned it towards the end that he's a musician, and he turned it into a band name and a blog or whatever else he has his vlog. And so it became, now he's clearly trying to build an audience. He's speaking directly to a viewer. So I think now he's getting into the realm of branding, which I think is something that really comes into play, especially if you're engaging in this media, because like if you go out to act, or if you go out to write, or if you go out to play music with a group, there is some level of wanting, at least some marginal level of fame and notoriety for what you're doing. So I think that he's getting into his name has kind of transformed from being maybe just something he wanted in the beginning, and even if he didn't acknowledge it, it's becoming his brand. So he had made it clear that all these things carry this name.
Right. What a great observation. And then the irony is then, as he's more comfortable with this name, he feels it more reflects his identity, even though this is an identity that he's constructing for an audience and a larger commercial or artistic purpose. Nice.
Doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
Doesn't it even just say something that he even created this video all around this whole thing, that he, and the energy level with which he did it, the hand movements and the energy level, and that he even thought to create a video around this identity.
Sherry, I think you have nailed why this thing is mystifying me. Because it obviously is super, super important to him. How come he's so animated about it? And what is his purpose then, after all, in creating this video? Pat?
I think it's interesting that he's so interested in creating this video and all of this, and he's only had like 90 some views. And now we're 98 or whatever, and then compare that to the YouTuber we watched with 500,000 followers or something, and that goes back to what Barbara said. If you're cool, you're cool. It's like, where does that come from? It does kind of play into identity too.
Yeah. Okay, so we have this focus question about to what extent or in what ways is identity influenced by mass media and popular culture? I feel like, I've known David Buckingham for 30 years, right? And I was really fascinated that in that article, he didn't choose to focus on the way in which our personal identities exist in relation to the media personalities and the media characters. Do you know, they say the average American child encounters 300 media personalities a week. 300. Why do you think David Buckingham left that out? And or does it even matter anymore? Really? How media characters might influence personal identity or personal and social identity.
So Renee, are you talking about identification with as an aspect of identity there? In terms of, in Buckingham was talking about identification with groups of people. So in this case, it's identification with a character. In which case, is he identifying himself with a Star Wars character? Instead of, so a fictional character, instead of a group of people who he could identify with.
And does it matter whether you identify with fictional characters or real people?
I think it does.
Tell me more.
Real groups of people relate back to you. So there's safety in numbers, maybe, or I'm not really sure what I mean by it yet, but it's reciprocal to identify with a group.
Nice. Other thoughts on this?
To follow up on that, I think that, perhaps you pick up an identity from a fictional character and it makes, there's already a response to that character culturally. And so you pick up that identity and so you get that automatic whatever response. But if you're identifying with a group, then you have to have some authenticity in who you are, because you're relating to real people who aren't going to be impressed by some name you have or some name dropping you might do. They're going to see you as you are and interact and appreciate who you are, as opposed to because you have some name that connects you somehow.
Matthew.
Hey, so I just want to bring up one question I thought of when I was watching the video is, so he's talking about all of these identities that he's kind of associating with to make his own little remix. But I kind of wonder what other vloggers has he watched? Because even like his approach in the video, it seemed like the stop where like all of a sudden on one part he'll pause and he's on the other side of the like another angle, and like his energy, is for some people it's a prescriptive approach. So I wonder who he watches that he's trying to emulate.
Oh, Matthew, you are so anticipating what we're going to be reading this week when we read more about vlogs and screencasts. When I watched it, I saw him copying John and Hank Green.
Yeah,
It seemed like he was absolutely modeling his performance after the Vlog Brothers.
I kind of wanted to relate this to myself because I mean I always considered myself growing up. I was always a very like silly kid. And when I would animate things, I would take bits of like different comedians that were popular to me at the time, like retelling stories like Jim Carrey being really animated, or like speaking very fast, or like other different people in my culture. At that time, I didn't have vlogs, but it was just the technology at the time. So it's just evolved.
Right, right. So did anybody in this call ever change your name when you were younger? Or use a different name? Okay, so let's talk a little personally about this.
Okay, so not exactly me personally, but I'm a twin, so a lot of people would call me by my sister's name. So, and I would just answer to it because I got tired of saying, no, my name is Denise, it's not Nicole. And so I would just pretend that I was her when people were talking to me so that I wasn't going to be rude.
Whoa. Okay, so that was out of kindness.
True.
Sort of. Okay.
I was a super tomboy as a kid, and I saw that my brother could do all kinds of things that I couldn't do. Back in that day, girls couldn't do things that boys could. So when we would go other places that people didn't know me, I would say my name was Charlie so that I could play with all the little boys. I had a very short haircut. I made my mom cut it really short, and I went by the name of Charlie.
Whoa. When I was 12, I decided that my name was way too ethnic. Way too ethnic. And so I thought it would be cooler for my name to be less ethnic. So I changed it to Leah. I don't know why I thought Leah was less ethnic. But yes, I did. I changed. I wanted people to call me by that name too, but it didn't work out. And it didn't work out because of what Barbara said about the real world context limiting my identity. I couldn't just change my identity. My identity was fixed in that context. And that's Buckingham's ideas about conformity are sort of connected to that idea that digital media, by putting us into new contexts and new communities, creates that flexibility of identity. Jamie, and then Cornelia. Oh, turn your microphone on, Jamie. Oh no. Jamie, while you're trying to do, oh, yes?
That better?
Perfect.
Okay, I'll take this off. It was reminding me of my son, who is an adult now, but he definitely went through a stage, and it started when he was very young, wanting to play around with different names. And I think what Renee just said about how today's world provides a lot of opportunities for trying on different identities, I think that that's true. I also think that that can be a little bit scary when the options are just so very wide. And one of the things that I worry about with kids and what they see in identities online, if they're commercialized identities, is that they might not have an awareness of how curated those identities are. And when they measure themselves up against them, they might not feel good about themselves.
Wonderful comment. Thank you. So exactly what I've been thinking about. Cornelia.
My name story is a baby with the name Cornelia quickly turned into, I was called the baby. And I was number 6 of 7 kids. And When I was about 3, they said, we've got to do something here. We can't keep on calling her the baby. Sister was reading a book, and long story short, the main character was named Cricket. So I was called Cricket for many, many years. And fast forward to I got a job as a manager. And I thought, well, I can't be, Cricket as a manager. So it's interesting how like that name didn't fit in my mind. And so I went back to Cornelia, and the funny part of the story is that now it's come full circle, and I've reconnected with people that I knew 30 years ago, and that many have said to me, we don't like Cornelia, too many syllables. Let's bring it back to Cricket. It's really interesting how it's going down, and Adam's giving me a thumbs up. Yeah, so it's a funny story.
It absolutely is. And of course, it's this idea about the opportunities and the limits of self-representation, right? So we are only in a limited way able to control how we represent ourselves, right? Because we have this social context around us that is so powerful. In this case, it was your friend's social context bringing you back to the childhood name. Adam.
Something I noticed while some of the stories were going on, and what Matt had said, kind of going back to his childhood, it got me thinking of how, like, since kind of the onset of the internet, and like how with my generation we grew up with it, even though it started relatively slower, maybe with like Windows 95, 98, Millennium, kind of that's when it was getting into middle school, getting into the using online platforms. And it got me thinking about how much thought went into like an instant messaging name in middle school, and how then that got me thinking that like so many things ask you to create an identity. Like it's a prompt to be allowed to access to use it. Like to use AIM, you had to think of a screen name. And then automatically you're thinking, well, how am I going to represent myself to look cool or to show myself to my peers? And so, mine was like a band name. And like, then that sort of created this whole like kind of parallel world where you had your friends in the evening who are screen names that, yes, they were real people. And you might like, even talk, like I remember even like talking to people in my class online, but in person, I didn't necessarily talk to that person. It kind of created almost like another
Right.
world,
Right, an alternative liminal space. Yeah, so actually one of the things that was really great about how you annotated the Buckingham article is that you got in your dialogue into the weeds. And to me, I just have to say, the mind exploding thing is if you look at all 3 of those groups, you all read the same article, but you did not all make the same meaning, right? Because people pulled out different ideas that were personally meaningful or connected to their practice or related to their work as educators or librarians, or just was something they agreed or disagreed with. And it's a beautiful thing to see that meaning-making process play out the way it did. I feel like I've been teaching online for a long, long time, but I think you guys, this team, has got the digital annotation as a dialogic space. You guys have that like working at a very, very high level. So I thought, since that is the case, let's try something equally collaborative for the next 5 or 7 minutes or so. I've been thinking a little bit about how our thinking about digital identity in relation to authorship creates some opportunities to think about research possibilities. So knowing as we do that research is a conversation, I'm going to invite you to do a pair share activity with a random partner that I will assign you in the next 2 minutes. Okay? Use what you learned by taking 1 or 2 ideas from Buckingham's essay on identity And through dialogue with your partner, I want you to generate some possible research questions. Many of you pointed out that he wrote this article like, I don't know, 10 years ago? 10 years ago, right? So some of our research questions are simply, is it true today? The claims he was making long, long ago. Other claims are also explorable by means of research. So you and your partner are going to talk through some ideas and generate, I guess Julie Quiro would call them, I wonder statements, or perhaps they will be research questions. Give me a thumbs up if you understand what's going to happen next. Okay, so if you click on that Google Doc, that's going to open up a collaborative writing space. You and your partner are going to, I've posted on that space, I guess I'll show that to you before I dump you into do this work. On this space, just in case you need to refresh your memory, I've put the 3 links so that you can quickly get to your annotated Google Doc, right? So there you go. So you can quickly get to it, and then below here is where I'd like you to put your 2 or 3 or however many questions you can generate in literally 7 minutes, okay? Ready, set. Now I'm gonna start the breakout rooms, and I am just going to, hold on here, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 7 is 14, so it'll be groups of 2 or 3, 6 breakout rooms. Wow, let's see what happens. Okay, ready? You have 6 minutes. Open the rooms. You should see the room opening now. See what research questions you can generate.
Mine's not opening. Hold on.
Try right-clicking. The Google Doc is tricky that way.
No, we were actually opening up Cami to refresh because I kind of want to revisit what I had said.
I put it in the chat room in case.
Right, here we go.
All right.
Although I'm not sure that that's your team, but I think it might be.
It's
Oh no, you're Matthew P. I keep getting you guys confused.
One question I had is on Buckingham's piece. He does mention like the social and cultural aspect of it, but he doesn't go like very deep into it. So I wrote that, and in addition to the socioeconomic impact, because there's one piece I took away that this form of identity sometimes is from the comfort of being middle class or higher.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really interesting angle, and it's certainly in terms of when he reviews the stage theories, back in the early 20th century, the concept of deviance or sort of the ways in which development was imagined was definitely coming from, a particular middle class point of view. Is there a way to frame that question as a research question, Matt?
I'm not quite sure, but I also like kind of toying with that, and like just to kind of build upon what you said with deviant behaviors. Is there like one accepted norm of what is deviant, or is that again a cultural norm? Because if this was, I don't know, 1607 Jamestown, if I didn't go to church, I was a pretty deviant fella. So I don't know how I want to word this.
Right. So take a look at on the bottom of page 4. Buckingham talks about subcultures, and he says that young people appropriate different cultural commodities and they form subcultures.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm not sure that. I think today we would understand that youth subcultures it's not completely a free choice. What subcultures you get introduced to or what subcultural communities you are aware of is probably going to be shaped by your social class and your music preferences and the people around you in your community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how much, I guess my research question would be like, how much freedom, like, does access to digital media give kids more freedom to choose their subcultural identities? Because like this kid who picked Japanese as a thing, right? Is he more free or less free?
Yeah, it's actually, that's kind of a question I'd ask. I should have built upon that. Because the access to the internet gives them access to these niche communities that they wouldn't have had in their offline world. I guess I can word something like that. I'm just kind of writing here as we're chatting.
So I'm not sure how this fits into identity for sure, but I guess one of the things that I wonder about is our kids today, they're online so much of the time that they're not actually free from, they don't have spaces where they're not having to live up to that and be part of that very often. And how detrimental is that if kids don't have a space to be free of the judgment of their peers and involvement of their peers?
I think that's worth writing down. This idea that and a lot of the cyberbullying literature says that, right? Back in the old days, if you were bullied at school, you could go
You went home.
You were a person. But now the bullies kind of follow you home with social media. So that issue of, can there be a unmediated space?
Yeah. Just talking about subcultures too, it's probably 20 years ago now. Was it Gilligan? I forget. She wrote about reviving Ophelia because my daughter was a teenager way back then. And I remember reading and that some African-American young females were actually protected from the consumer drive to have a certain image because they had a subculture. And it's one of the things that I thought of when I was reading that article.
Right. That's actually a really interesting thing, isn't it? How media subcultures can cause different kinds of cultural pressures. Pressure to be thin, pressure to wear makeup, pressure to have great hair, or whatever they are, right? Whatever those pressures are.
Yeah.
Actually, so I just wrote down a question to builds off that is, so does the anonymity provide an influence to the creation of these subcultures? Because there are some realms where people completely have this, different persona. They don't have to, particularly I'm thinking like in these entertainment, especially like gaming worlds where kids are creating gamer tags, whether it's like PC games where they can just type or even speak. which then that's a little less anonymous, but still, it's still there where they can kind of create who they want to be or who they want to be perceived in. So what creation of a subculture does that influence have, or does that influence?
Put that down in the chart, in the, write that.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, good. And so, Matthew, do you think that idea has any connection to identity in relation to fame or social status? Like, because it is a more public kind of, like, if you're really a good gamer and you've got skills and people will watch you, you kind of have a certain kind of social status and visibility. And I wonder how, back in the day, if you wanted fame, you had to be a theater major or a singer.
Yeah.
Right? But now
I do think that does. Especially like there's so many accounts where you don't even know people's real identities, like these meme accounts that they just post, they're reposting other content all day and they get all these crazy amount of followers. And it does, in some cases, like when they get a lot of followers and they're actually raking in money from views, they do let you see their true identity, but not true. That's loaded. Their face, I'll say. But also, there's still things that remain completely anonymous, like the hacktivist group Anonymous, who definitely have some notoriety and don't know their true identity. So I do think there is a thrill in that too, in gaining fame. All students want to be famous. I've got so many students with YouTube channels, trying to create their own brand.
is that something you think we should be concerned about or not?
Yes and no. I think it needs to be monitored, because I have a student, for example, because I was looking up when we were watching the video, I searched this kid's video. I want to see his other videos. Like, was he, does he have a lot of views, averaging like 300? So then I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and it was like a suggestion of a student I have, because it was linked to my work account. And, he's getting an average of 2,000 views. And then I saw another student of mine while we were watching this video who has 250 to 300,000 views. And he's sponsored, and the companies are sending him now I had him as a freshman. He's a senior now. He has his own little brand. And I think that's magnificent that he's not even out of high school, and he's built a brand for himself, and he's having people send him stuff and money. So he's created an identity, certainly.
Fascinating.
And you never would know it speaking to him in real life.
Really?
Yes. His command and his presence, like he follows the script, and like he's making videos for a while, but he's a quiet, low-key kid. It's wonderful.
It's intriguing.
As a parent with a child who's like on the other side of that, one of the things that I observed in my own family was my son got lost in video games for a while, and we had trouble kind of controlling that. And it wasn't until he was a junior in college that he decided that something else needed to be important. So one of the things that I'm thinking of as far as identity and what might be a negative thing, I'm sure it has balancing positives, but if they do get a lot of attention, which gets them off track from other things that they might be beneficial for them to be doing. I saw that in my own son's actions, and I have also had it in my district. In a student, we had a child going into second grade who was posting YouTube videos that had very suggestive nature to them. She obviously had watched videos and knew how to produce them, and she wanted to have a voice, but she was getting attention that probably made her feel good, but I'm not sure that it was beneficial to get it in those ways.
Right. She's self-sexualizing herself without being aware of it. Yeah,
right.
This is a very interesting and important issue of identity, because it shows how easy it is. You mentioned like going down the rabbit hole. It's actually easy for kids to get sidetracked into really destructive potential identities. So I wonder how frequent that is, and I wonder how you even do research on that, right? Because there's such a social stigma around that. Like Matthew, the fact that you found your YouTuber kid, that was kind of a miracle, right?
Yeah, well, Since I have my work account, because I have it linked to my Google Chrome, so Coventry Schools, they have their algorithms to say, hey, you'd probably like this guy. And I was like, well, I taught him 3 years ago. I know him very well.
That is so, so cool. All right, we'll see if we can pick out at least one question we can share with the group. We're going to go back to our large group now. That was fascinating. We could talk for 20 more minutes.
Oh, see?
Okay, are we coming back? We are coming back.
Yay!
Okay, I'm going to take a look and see what questions we ended up generating. Let's see if I can find them. Oh, wow. Oh, look at that. Okay, very nice. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's what I suggest. I wonder, what do you think this one means? And are you in a silo?
That's got Adam written all over it.
I did not write that.
I think it was me, actually, but Adam was in my group.
I was there.
What does that mean?
It means, when you create your identity on social media and you have your friends that all think the same way as you, are you only hearing the same ideas, and are you only seeing the same news, and are you only seeing the same people? So you kind of, and silo is not the right word, but that's the only one I could come up with.
Got it.
I think Morgan Jaffe would call that a bubble.
A bubble.
Very nice. Okay, so I'll hear from two people, just two people. Pick the most interesting question on this list and tell me why it's interesting to you. I picked, and are you in a silo? I knew that was going to be an interesting question, and I got a good answer. What's an interesting question on this list, and what makes it interesting? Who wants to go first?
Oh, well, the question is national identity still as important. That just struck me because Pat, did you write that? Pat, did you write that question?
I did write that question.
Was that when you were talking about the Olympics?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because why don't you talk about that? That was really interesting.
So I thought it was interesting with the Olympics, especially how many people that were born in the United States and other places were competing for other countries. And is it just because they want to compete? Do they have heritage? I did read the South Korean government emailed female college hockey players that had even, an eighth of Korean blood so that they could field the team. It sometimes for like the figure skating, it was to find a partner that you matched with. So there were all kinds of reasons, and it's just so much more vague in terms of nationality anymore.
Yeah, beautiful, and thank you for sharing that. I found myself through the whole Olympics, and Randy and I would just get in big discussions about this, thinking what we're seeing is such a Americanized display of patriotism that I was like, I kind of just really was, I felt oppressed by that. And I kept thinking, I wonder if the athletes really feel this, or if this is, how much is this being, imposed by the way this media story is being told? Because we were cheering when the Canadians won, and we were cheering when the Germans won, and then we realized that we were kind of reading oppositionally, because the show itself didn't really want us to think about people outside of the national identity context? So I thought that question was wonderful as well. And obviously, we could talk all night about identity, which is why we kind of have the chance to do that, because next week's topic, while it's about collaboration, also addresses some aspects of identity. So let me just, to keep us on schedule, let me talk to you about what I'd like you to do as homework for next week. Hopefully you'll complete this work before next Wednesday at 7 o'clock when we have our class. Our theme is why are partnerships so powerful when it comes to creating media? So first things first, take a look at a Leap2 project created by another team and notice some of the key content and features, including the use of images. Reflect on your thinking and feelings as you encounter their work. Then offer a brief interpretation, including questions and ideas that the work communicated or raised for you. Post your interpretation on our Facebook Digital Authorship closed group. I'll make a link there. I haven't made that link active yet, but you know how to get there. And make sure to clearly identify the work that you're commenting on. So authors need audiences. I'll be an audience, of course, but so will you. So choose one other work to look at. Then we're going to do 3 readings. Chapter 11 is about vlogs and screencasts, and we saw a vlog this evening from this boy with the Japanese name. Rish and Pitash write a really interesting essay about a cool experiment developed by Ian O'Byrne called Walk My World. And we're going to read 2 pieces about that project. One is very, very readable, really a report of practice. And the other one is a little bit more scholarly. I think they complement each other well. Now, after you read those readings, what I'd like you to do is create a vlog. Since we'll be talking about vlogs, create a vlog on the Flipgrid to respond to the readings, where you identify 2 or 3 key ideas and discuss them in relation to your personal and professional identity. After posting, view the vlog of another student and offer a brief video comment with questions, feedback, and response. I think everybody in the room is familiar with how to use a Flipgrid to do a vlog. Can you give me a thumbs up if you're familiar with that? Of course, most of you all are. So it's a lazy man's vlog, but it's a vlog, right? And since you're going to be learning about the conventions of a vlog, please feel free to use the conventions of a vlog genre in your response, okay? Give me a thumbs up if you understand what you're going to be reading and working on this week. It's going to be fun. And by the way, next week is the last class we have before spring break. So, woohoo! All right, see you guys next Wednesday, 7 o'clock. If you have any questions, ping me at Twitter. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Renee, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So I held off on the email about our collaboration.
Yeah.
Do you want me to send you like our scope of work that we created, or just like how we met and?
Yep, you can basically send me your scope of work and then a little narrative about the experience of the collaboration. Doesn't have to be long, but some people are putting their scope of work up on their Leap2 page. If you want to do that, you can. If you don't want to, you can send it to me in an email.
All right, I'll do it. I just wasn't sure how you wanted that, talk about the collaboration.
Yep, I'm flexible as long as you find a way to get across a little bit about the, the creative process.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
See ya.
Hi, it's Cornelia.
Hi, Cornelia.
Quick question. Scope of work. I feel like I missed something. That's part of our this week's homework.
Chapter scope of work is presented in chapter 5 as a planning tool for your Leap 2.
Okay, so and I just didn't see that written anywhere in the write-up. So that's something that should be submitted today.
Let's take a look here.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
So digital authorship, I'm just going to go to the assignment and see what it actually does say. So it does not require, it does not require you to make a scope of work.
Okay.
So you're okay.
Okay, that's good to hear. And one really quick question: I have no experience with Flipgrid, so just look around and I'll find some kind of tutorial. And
well, you probably won't need a tutorial, but I'll give you I'll do a short one right now, just for the 5 seconds that it will take, right? Because it's just really easy. So I clicked on that link, and it took me here.
Okay.
Right? And so see that big green button, you click on that big green button, and then it's going to say, if you're using it for the first time, it's going to say, can give my microphone permission, give my camera permission. And then the first thing I do is I take I hit this red button here. I don't know if it's going to let me do that. Oh yeah, and then it says see recording 3, 2, 1. Oh, okay. Now I'm doing my blog entry, and here it is. It's recording. It's crazy. And then I can hit this next button. Oh, okay. Now I'm doing my blog entry, and here it is. Okay, so that's pretty good. I can make it longer. I can keep recording it if I'm cool with it. Then I just take a picture like that, right? And then I can put stickers on it. That's kind of crazy. All you need to do really is your first name and your last name. You don't need to put in anything else. That's just so I know that it's you. And then it shows up like that.
Okay.
Right? So pretty simple process. You have, I believe, 5. You're supposed to only do 4 minutes. So think about the kind of preparation tools you might want to have in terms of what you're going to say, how you're going to say it.
Okay.
You'll practice.
Yep.
And then you'll have fun with it.
Okay. Thank you.
And to respond to other people, you just click on their picture?
So to respond, you click on that, and then you see how it, okay, now I'm doing my blog. Then it says add your reply. And now I can talk back to you and make my reply, right? So it's a pretty simple tool for, okay, now I'm doing, yeah, it's a pretty simple tool for having like a little bit of a asynchronous dialogue.
That's right. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Cool. All right, cool. If you have any other questions, ping me, and I'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Barbara, Sherry, anything to talk about?
I just noticed that Denise and I didn't have a link on that page. I was just wondering if there was an issue with accessing.
So I made that page at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. So I'll go back now through the...
Because we both handed ours in on Monday, so I was just making sure that there wasn't an issue with accessing our...
Okay.
If you do, just email me and let me know.
I'll go see if I can track it down. If not, I'll ping you and give you an email.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Bye.
All right. See you next week. Bye-bye.